And we're back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rollsicle. Of course, I am Nathaniel, one of the hosts here at the channel. And of course, I'm not joined by my lovely co-host, Ashley, for any of these, but she does make up the slides. So if you guys want to thank her down in the comments below, that would be greatly appreciated on her part. But we are back for the Magic the Gathering. That was just a bad intro. And we're back. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Rollsicle. I, of course, am Nathaniel, one of the two hosts here at Rollsicle, and I'm doing the Magic the Gathering Foundation set review, broken up into the WUBRG and multicolor colorless categories, and we are on the green cards. If you guys haven't checked out white, blue, black, red, please do. They're already out on the channel, and if you want to stay tuned for multicolor and colorless, that'll be coming out tomorrow if you're seeing this, or it might already be out. Either way, we're going to jump into this. Before we do, quick disclaimer. One, we're a small channel, so if you guys would like to leave a comment, like, subscribe to the channel, any and all of that is not only greatly appreciated, but it does so much for the channel, I can't even begin to explain. You know, if you subscribe to a really big channel, which you should, most of them are really good, it doesn't really impact them as much on an individual basis. But for us, every single subscriber, comment, like that we get really does impact the channel and its trajectory. So thank you guys for being so supportive. Second of all, I just wanted to say, give Ashley, my co-host, a huge shout out in the comments below because she makes the slides that we go through for these videos. I record them, I talk about the cards, but a lot of time went into making this and she deserves some thanks. So down below, give her some love. Let's jump into things. If you haven't seen the previous ones, which you should, if you haven't, I'm going to be reviewing each card on a 1 to 10 basis. So let's start out. You'll get to kind of see how it works. So first we have Ambush Wolf. These are in the order of their card numbers on Scryfall, at least on the set. And this is only the cards in Magic the Gathering Limited, Magic the Gathering Foundations Limited, and also I'm reviewing them from a limited standpoint. So there are some good cards in Commander or other constructed formats that just suck in Limited. And yeah, so I will be reviewing those ones poorly. 1 being horrible, never play the card. 10 being absolute bomb, always play the card. Here we go. Ambush Wolf, 3 drop. Wolf, 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 wolf. Ambush Wolf, 3 drop, 4/2, flash, that's why it's an ambush. When this creature enters, exile up to 1 target card from a graveyard. That doesn't do a whole lot, although if they do target something, you can kind of catch them with this, but you're really not going to do that most of the time. This is a 4/2 with flash. For 3, acceptable. It does play into the green-red theme of having a creature with power 4 or greater, and yeah, I think it's totally good. It's going to get the 4 out of 10. Very common score. 4 and 3 out of 10 are where the just playable cards, nothing stands out, but they're not horrible, tend to sit, and then anything above 4 or anything below 3 is where I tend to put the never play cards or the almost always play cards. Next, we have Apothecary Stomper. This is a 6-drop 4/4 with Vigilance that says when this creature enters, choose 1. Put 2+1/+1 counters on target creature or gain 4 life. Now, you're never going to gain 4 life unless you really need it or you happen to have some life gain triggers, but you can always put the 2+1/+1 counters on this. So really you can view this as a 6-drop 6/6 with Vigilance or a 6-drop 4/4 with Vigilance that you can put those on something else, which is just better than a 6-drop 4/4 than a 6-drop 6/6. So giving the option to take 2 of its power and toughness and put it on something else is very powerful with a lot of lifelink and flying and other things like that, and just +1/+1 counter synergies in this format. Very good card. It doesn't stand out crazy powerful, but I do think when you look at those playables, I'm going to give it 4 out of 10. Actually, yeah, I'm going to give it 4 out of 10. There are better cards. All right, Beastkin Ranger is a 3/3 for 3 with Trample, and whenever another creature you control enters, it gets +1/+0. So that Trample is going to really pay off as you can get this guy's power up to 5 or 6 if you have a turn where a lot of creatures come into play. That being said, at the end of the day, it's a 3/3 with Trample for 3. Pretty good. It is an elf, which is kind of a sub-theme, but you know, you're going to have a hard time building into elf. I think the elf color is, what, green and black, but you're still going to have a hard time doing it. It's playable. It's fine. Actually, okay, backtrack. Apothecary Stomper is going to get a 5 out of 10 because I'm going to give this guy 4 out of 10. Apothecary Stomper is a good card. You should play it more often than not. Just remember, it's that top end. So Beastkin Ranger, 4 out of 10. Apothecary Stomper, 5 out of 10. Moving on. Cackling Prowler, Hyena Rogue. This is a 4-drop 4/3 with Ward 2. Now that Ward 2 is worth something because usually I'll have removal that I'm holding up and then my opponent plays this and I don't have the extra 2. So suddenly I've been telling myself, you know, whatever they play next turn for 4 mana, I'm just going to remove it. Well, not anymore, I'm not. Anyways, so that Ward 2 does some work. And then Morbid, at the beginning of your end step, if a creature died this turn, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature. That's a really good Morbid trigger. You're probably going to get that trigger the turn you play it, so it's really a 4 mana 5/4 with the potential to grow and Ward 2. Great card, 5 out of 10. Play this most of the time, but remember, it's a rather expensive card, so don't be afraid to fill in some of your cheaper drops. Next, we have Eager Truffle Snout. This is a 4/2 with for 3 with Trample, and if it deals damage to a player, create a food token. Pretty good, pretty solid. It's really good in a life gain deck, because you know you can use the food to gain life. It works pretty good in the 4 power deck because you can get 4 power out on the board by turn 3. The trample is pretty decent. If you're buffing things up, you're guaranteed to get that damage through. I think it's a playable card, but it doesn't stand out crazy powerful to me, or even just more than average, so I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. Next, we have Elf Sworn Giant. I'm known for my water. Or at least I feel like I might be by the time these are coming out, because there's a lot of it in videos. 5/3 for 5, which isn't great. It has reach, so that's nice, but it's probably going to die to whatever it's blocking in the air. And then Landfall. Whenever a land you control enters, create a 1/1 green elf warrior creature token. So, to be fair, you can get a lot of creatures off of this. You can get quite a few of them if you play a lot of lands after it, but you're also playing this on turn 5, or at least at 5 mana. You've probably gotten a lot of lands out, and the game might not have that much left in it. So, I don't think this is crazy powerful. It's going to land the 4 out of 10 slot. Next, we have Elvish Regrower. This is a 4 mana 4/3 that lets you return a permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Just any permanent card. This is absolutely broken. I mean, 4 mana 4/3 is almost already at the vanilla baseline. And then for you to just get a card back from your graveyard to your hand, wow. I mean, wow. I love this card. I think it's great. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10 as an uncommon. Very unlikely for cards to get any higher than that as a common or uncommon. All right, next we have Felling Blow. This is an uncommon 3-drop. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and then that creature deals damage equal to its power to target creature an opponent controls. This is really good removal. You'll notice that in green, all of the removal is basically punch spells like this, or fight spells. This is a really good one. It lets you buff up your creature a little bit, so if you were just shy, you can do that. It also lets you put a +1/+1 counter if you're building into that synergy. All around, Felling Blow is a great card. It's great removal in green. I love this card. I'm honestly, because the 5 out of 10. Play this card. Play removal. Play removal. Play interaction. All right, next we have Loot Exuberant Explorer. This is a 3 mana 1/4. It lets you play an additional land on each of your turns, which is nice. And then we have 4 and 2 green, although that land on each turn isn't going to do a whole lot past maybe 1 or 2 triggers, but that's still 1 or 2 free ramps that you got out of them. Tap them after you pay 6 to look at the top 6 cards of your library. You may reveal a creature card with mana value less than or equal to the number of lands you control and put it onto the battlefield. So this is a way to go and search for your really big creatures. And in green, you're going to have some big creatures that you can hit off of this. So loot is really good in those decks. And if you do have some of those or a lot of those, this is an incredible card. But on his own or without a bunch of really big things to hit, this is a consistent ability, but it's not a broken ability, if you kind of understand what I'm saying there. So I think he's great, but I don't think he's broken. I'm going to give him a 7 out of 10. Kind of puts that Elvish Regrower into perspective. All right, next we have Mossborn Hydra. This is a 3 mana. This one was like really advertised for Foundations. 3 mana, 0/0, but it enters with a +1/+1 counter on it with Trample. And it has Landfall. Whenever a land enters the battlefield. I'm sorry if you guys can hear my roommates. I can't keep them quieter than I try. Anyways, so Trample 1/1. Trample 0/0 with a +1/+1 counter. And then Landfall, whenever a land enters, double the number of +1/+1 counters on it. So obviously this can get stupid big and stupid broken. but it also has a bit of a floor on it too, right? Because it enters as a 1/1. If you play it on turn 3, you've already played your land that turn. So really you want to play this on turn 4, play your land after it to turn it into a 2/2. But even then, it's still open to stab, burst lightning, abrade, a lot of different, any sort of felling blow or bite down, which we haven't gotten to yet from the opponent if they have a creature. I mean, all sorts of removal. But it does have the potential to get really big in the long run. So this is an example of a card with a low floor but a really high ceiling. And because of that, it is still really good. I suggest you put it in your decks, but you got to be careful with how you play it. You got to be careful with how you play it, with how much mana is left up from your opponent, those sorts of things. So realistically, I don't think it's as broken as it sounds initially. I'm going to be giving it a 6 out of 10. Obviously, its ceiling has the potential for 10, but it doesn't get there most of the time, I find. So I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Next, we have a Needletooth Pack. And yes, that means if there's an Elvish Regrower and a Mossborn Hydra, I'm telling you, I think that you should pick the Elvish Regrower. Anyways, Needletooth Pack is a 5 mana 4/5 with Morbid at the beginning of your end step. If a creature died this turn, put 2 +1/+1 counters on target creature you control. I think this is incredible. I mean, as long as you play this on a turn that a creature died, you're getting a 6/7 for 5, or you're putting 2 +1/+1 counters on another creature that benefits you more, and it can keep doing that on other end steps as long as a creature died on your turn. Incredible card. This is really powerful. I think that this is a very strong higher end card here. I'm going to give it 6 out of 10. 6 out of 10, right up there with Mossborn Hydra, right? Because this is a much more consistent card than Mossborn Hydra, but it doesn't have the ceiling that Mossborn Hydra does. All right, so next we have Preposterous Proportions. This is a 7-drop. Creatures you control get +10/+10 and Vigilance until end of turn. So it's kind of like an Overrun style effect. It's making the creatures significantly bigger than Overrun to the point where every single one of them has to be blocked, and they're going to not have to tap because of Vigilance. But the problem that I see with that is that it doesn't actually give Trample, which is what makes an Overrun effect like that usually so powerful, is because that damage is getting through and you probably win the game. This doesn't win you the game, it sets you up to win the game on a future turn, which gives like one more turn for an opponent to surprise you, or for an opponent to block just enough so they don't die and then get a little bit of damage through that's enough to kill you. It's just not really playable. I don't think this card is a 1 out of 10, but I just don't really suggest it as your top end. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. Okay, next we have Quake Strider Ceratops. This is a crazy example of, for those of you that don't know, there's this one, I think it's a 5 green dinosaur that's just a 10/10 for 5 green, like 5 green pips. And it's a, like, not a very good card, but it's worth quite a bit just because of how much it's been printed and whatnot. And Quake Strider Ceratops is just like a definition of power creep in Magic, because this is an uncommon that costs 1 more, but it has like the same distributed stats. I find it very interesting, but I digress. 3 mana and 3 green, so a total of 6 for a 12/8 vanilla creature. It's good. It's also not broken, though, because we live in a world of Magic where if it doesn't have an ability, it's kind of inherently behind the rest of the creatures that are going to get played. So I don't think this is great, but I also don't think it's bad, right? It's a solid top end that, unless they have direct removal, they're going to have a really hard time getting rid of this. Fiery Annihilation isn't going to do it. Stab isn't going to do it. Burst Lightning isn't going to do it because of that 8 toughness. So it is pretty good, or at least they're going to have to like 2-for-1 themselves by blocking with a creature and then using removal. So I like this card. It's pretty good, but if it does get baked into a pie or hero downfall, you're usually pretty sad when you see that happen. So I'm going to give it a 4 out of 10. It's right there in the middle. All right, next we have a great mythic, Quilled Great Worm. I don't think I've had the joy of getting to play with this card yet, but boy, would I love to. It's a 7/7 Trampler. Whenever a creature you control deals combat damage during your turn, not to a player, whenever a creature you control just deals combat damage, you put that many +1/+1 counters on it. That means that when the Quake Strider deals damage to anything, if it didn't die when it did that, it gets 12 +1/+1 counters put on it. Then, on top of that, you may cast this card from your graveyard by removing 6 counters from among creatures you control in addition to paying its other costs. So you can still bring it back out as a 6-drop as long as you just have 6 counters that you can remove. And yeah, I mean, it's just really, really broken. And then if you can block to get more counters back on, I mean, this thing just goes so stupid. I mean, so stupid. This has won so many games that just you're clearly losing. It's a great stabilization card. It does wonders if you're at kind of a stalemate, and if you need a win, like if you're already winning, this is just gonna seal the deal. Phenomenal card, definition of a bomb. What's it gonna get? 10 out of 10, not a doubt in my mind. Quilled Great Worm, incredible card. All right, next we have Spinner of Souls. I love this card. Spider Spirit. It's a 4/3 with reach. Whenever a non-token creature you control dies, you may reveal cards from the top of your library until you reveal a creature card. Put that into your hand, rest on the bottom of your library in a random order. So this lets you go get a creature card every time a non-token creature you control dies, which just kind of keeps you consistent. And it's a 4/3 with reach for 3. This is just a definition of play it every single time you get it, which is automatically going to put it in that higher like category of cards. I think I'm going to put it at a... I think it's going to get an 8. An 8 out of 10. And the reason, if it doesn't sound powerful for an 8 out of 10, it's a 3-drop. This is a 3-drop. I mean, if I'm playing someone in limited and they knock that out at turn 3, bro, I'm screwed. It's over. All right, next we have Sylvan Scavenging. This is a fun card. 1 and 2 green enchantment. At the beginning of your end step, choose one. Put a +1/+1 counter on target creature control, which is fine. I mean, every turn get a +1/+1 counter for 3 mana is... if it sticks around, it's powerful, but it's not great. But I do love the next ability. Create a 3/3 green raccoon creature token, but only if you have a creature with power 4 or greater. So this can help get you a creature to power 4 or greater, or if you play it later in the game and you already have that, it's just giving you 3/3s every turn. I mean, a 3/3 for 3 is what we would say is playable, but not very good. Probably hits you like a 3 out of 10 on that. And if this can just do that multiple turns in a row until it gets removed, wow. I mean, wow. I think this is an incredible rare. I think it's very, very powerful. I'm also going to give it an 8 out of 10. It doesn't win the game on its own. In fact, it does nothing on its own. You have to have creatures. But I do think it's still pretty powerful. So because of that, I'm going to give it an 8 out of 10. I think the power creeps out the fact that it does absolutely nothing on its own. And I'm going to give it that 8 out of 10. All right, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, if you know me, if you've ever talked to me, this is probably my favorite common from this set. I think that Treetop Snare Spinner does so much work. It's a 4-drop 1/4, which sounds bad. It's got reach and death touch. That's really where the work gets put in because nothing's getting past this creature. They have the biggest creature known to man, other than maybe Menace, right? Nothing's getting past this creature. That does so much for stabilizing, right? Now, this card doesn't inherently do a whole lot for winning more, right? If I'm already winning the game and I just throw down a Treetop Snare Spinner, I didn't really advance my board state too much, but what I did do is I made it a lot harder for them to drop a bomb and stabilize because I can block it with this and kill it. On top of that, if I'm the one who's losing, or if I'm the one that's in the stalemate, this is a great drop because in the stalemate situation, you have a ton of mana that you don't know what to do with. Oh wait, let me pay 3. I didn't read this ability. Let me pay 3 and put a +1/+1 counter on target creature I control. Huge. I mean, massive. I think this card does so much work, and I truly am going to say this is a 7 out of 10 on a common. Have me in the comments, take me out, prove me wrong. I want to know what you guys think. I can take some constructive criticism, but personally, yeah, I'm giving it a 7 out of 10. This does so much work, and I love it every time I see Treetop Snare Spinner. Count my words. Is that what the saying is? I don't know. Something my words, whatever the saying is. Mark my words. We got there. Mark my words. This card is incredible. If you draft it, you're going to do a lot better. All right, next we have Affectionate Indrik. This is a well-known card. We are now at the point where we're in the reprints of Foundations. When this enters as a 4/4 for 6, you get to have it fight target creature you don't control. So this is going to be removal It is sometimes a 1-for-1 in the sense that if you kill something that's going to kill it, then you lost it. But if you use it to fight something that's smaller than it, you get to keep the 4/4, and you just got to remove something. So that's why people really love this card, and I do think that ekes it up above some of the other cards, but I am only going to give it a 5 out of 10. Just because it doesn't do anything if you need to kill something with more than 4 toughness. All right, so next we have a bite down. Now, you can always use it to kill something else. Like, you don't need to waste that effect, but if they only have a big creature, you're a little SOL. So 5 out of 10. Still better than most cards. All right, next we have a bite down. This is the staple removal in this because felling blow is an uncommon. So the common removal in green is bite down. Very simple. Target creature you control deals damage equal to its power to target creature or planeswalker you don't control. Very nice, very simple. It doesn't do a lot when you have something small and the opponent has something big, but if you're doing green right, you probably have the bigger creature. So I think Bite Down is a phenomenal card. It is one of the best removal in the format, so 6 out of 10. Easy. Easy 6 out of 10. All right, next we have a Blanchwood Armor. Oh boy. Y'all, I think it was on video. I don't know. Go check the Road to Mythic videos. I think it was on video that I got burned by this card because they were playing a mono green deck. But 2 and a green, enchant creature. Enchanted creature gets +1/+1 for each forest you control. Completely unplayable. I mean, yes, in mono green you can play it, but you should not be drafting mono green. I mean, if you already are and then this comes up, take it. But that's not a reason to give it more points. Don't play this card. This card is unplayable. 1 out of 10. Moving on. Because most of the time, you're giving your creature like +2 or +3/+3, something like that. Next, we have Broken Wings. This is sort of removal, but it's just not a very consistent one. Destroy artifact, enchantment, or creature with flying. This is the exact card that you take if you're playing best of 3, because it is good to sub in. And if you're drafting physically, or if you're playing sealed physically, you're probably playing best of 3. But on Arena, there's a good chance that you aren't, so just keep that in mind. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10, but it has its spots where it can be pretty good. All right, next we have Bushwhack. This is also sort of removal. Choose one, search your library for a basic land card, reveal it, put it into your hand, shuffle, or creature you control fights. It's pretty good, honestly, because you can use it to go get that land that you need. It lets you keep a 2-lander, for say, and be very comfortable. Maybe even a 1-lander, but that's risking it. That's really not 2 lands in a dream, and that 1 land better be a forest or you're making a bad decision. but it kind of lets you do that. Or if you draw it later, you can use it as removal, and it's pretty effective removal because green is going to have big creatures. So I think this is a great card, but it lands in that better side of playable, 4 out of 10. All right, here we go. Doubling Season. An incredible card. Me and Ashley actually pulled one of these. She's the one that opened the pack, so Ashley pulled one of these for us. It was incredible. It was a great experience. I love to know that we have a Doubling Season in person, but if you don't know what this does, 5 mana, basically. If you would ever create counters or tokens, create twice that many. That's what it says. And it's completely unplayable in Limited. Never put a Doubling Season in your deck. I have seen it do a little bit, so it's going to get 2 out of 10. Don't play this card. Don't play Doubling Season. But it can't get the 1. All right, next we have a Dwynnin, Giltleaf Dane. This is an example of the elf tribe that you can build into, but I don't really suggest it unless you get 2 or 3 of these, in which case, sure, maybe you can build into elves. It's a 3/4 with reach. Other elves you control get +1/+1, and then when it attacks, you gain a life for each elf that you control, which is pretty good, especially if you have multiple of these. It's a 4-drop, it's an uncommon, it's decent, but it's not crazy. It's going to land at that 4 out of 10 category. The reach is nice, though. All right, next we have Dwynnin's Elite to go with it. This is a 2-drop, 2/2 that can create a 1/1 elf as long as you control another elf when you play it. Again, perfectly playable. I don't hate this. You don't want to run it in a deck that you're not really running other elves, though, because you really want to get the 3 power and 3 toughness for your mana. But yeah, totally playable. 4 out of 10. All right, so next we have Elvish Archdruid. This is 1 and 2 green for a 2/2, buffing all your other elves. It's an elf lord. Other elves you control get +1/+1. And the hopefully well-known, but if you don't play constructed formats, you might not know it, tap add a green for each elf you control. That's right, that's what Elvish Archdruid does. It's very powerful. Each elf you control, if you control 12 elves, yeah, you're tapping for 12 green from a mana dork. Insane. That being said, it's not that crazy unless you're building elves. So when I look at this from just a non-building elf perspective, it's not that great of a card, right? It's only good if you have other elves to buff up. Otherwise, it's a 3-drop 2/2 mana dork that only taps for 1 green because it does count itself. And in that sense, it's going to get a 3 out of 10. But it is playable in the sense that you can play it around elves. So that's why it's not at 1 or 2. All right, next we have Garruk's Uprising, 3-mana enchantment. This is the enchantment that cares about creatures with power 4 or greater. When it enters, if you control one of those, draw a card, and then every time you play one of those, you draw a card. And then creatures you control have trample, which is not something to forget about here. This can make preposterous proportions playable. But I don't know where I land on Garruk's Uprising. I've seen it put in the work, like I've seen it draw 3 or 4 cards, but you have to be very heavy in the creature's power 4 or greater. You have to have some strong staples in that deck, and if you do, this is a very good card. If you're running a lot of the Truffle Snouts and the cheaper cards that are going to trigger it, and then your bigger cards are also the cards that are going to trigger it, then great. You can totally run this card. Because of that, it's going to land right at the 4 out of 10 category. I'm hesitant to give it anything less than that just because it can do really good, and the trample can put in a lot of work in green. 4 out of 10. All right, next we have Genesis Wave. This is pay X and 3 green. Reveal the top X cards of your library, and you may put any number of permanent cards with mana value X or less onto the battlefield. Then put all the other cards into your graveyard. Okay, so basically, you pay 7, 8, 9, we'll go with 8. You pay 8 and you get to look at the top 5 and you get to cast and play basically any permanent. Let's see, you may put any number of permanent cards. So you can put lands onto the battlefield here. So you get to put basically all 5 of those cards onto the battlefield unless they cost more than that. But that's also 8 mana. I mean, this just does nothing for 4 or 5 mana. This does literally nothing. It is only a top-end card, and there are much, much better top-end cards. This is not a playable card. Do not put this in your deck. It's not worth it. It's great in Commander and things like that, where you can hit it for X equals 14, X equals 25, but not here. You don't want to play it here. So 1 out of 10, not a playable card. Next, we have Ghalta Primal Hunger. This is a 12-cost, 12/12 dinosaur with trample, but it costs X less, where X is the total power of creatures you control. That sounds really scary, right? 12 cost, I'm never going to play this, but more often than not, you're playing it for 4 or 5 mana, sometimes even less. That's what makes this card so dangerous. A 12/12 trampler that if you play your cards right, you can get out for 2 green. Incredible card, great value, but it doesn't win the game alone, and without the power to get it out for cheap, it's actually not that playable of a card. So because of that, it's going to land at the 8 out of 10 category. It's going to land at 8 out of 10 category, which is, pretty solid for a rare. All right, so next we have a Giant Growth. Giant Growth is a single green. Target creature gets +3/+3 until end of turn. It is one of the most basic combat tricks ever. I mean, I remember when I was very first learning Magic, shout out to my dad, I was like, ooh, what would I have been? Maybe 8 or 9 in Germany, because we were a military family, so we were living in Germany at the time. I can distinctly remember learning how instant speed combat tricks worked with this card. Great memories, by the way. That being said, it's not that powerful. It is playable, but it's not great. It's going to land in that 3 out of 10 category. All right, next we have Gnarlid Colony, which I didn't know was a reprint. It is a 2-mana 2/2 with Kicker 3, so it can then enter as a 5-mana 4/4 because it gets 2 +1/+1 counters on it, and then all creatures you control with +1/+1 counters have trample. So this card is significantly better in a +1/+1 counter deck, but it is a playable 2/2 for 2 that has the ability to be a 4/4 for 5, which I just find that versatility to be nice on cards, and it's going to bump it into that 4 out of 10 category. Next we have Grow from the Ashes, which is ramp Oh, had to stretch. I've been sitting for a while. Next, we have Grow from the Ashes, which is Ramp. It's a 3-mana search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, or 5 mana, because it has kicker as well. Do that for 2 lands. They don't enter tapped, so you can tap them for something afterwards, so that part is nice. And I think this is, generally speaking, a great Ramp card. I don't think it's bad at all. I'm still just going to put it at 4 out of 10 just because, I mean, it's casual Ramp. It doesn't do anything too wild, but I think it's pretty good. All right, next we have Inspiring Call. It is a 3-mana instant. You draw a card for each creature you control with a +1/+1 counter on it, and then those creatures gain indestructible until end of turn. So you could potentially pay 3 mana, draw quite a few cards, and give them indestructible, all at instant speed. It sounds really good, and it's not. It's not playable. The setup that you need to make this card good is so unlikely and so uncommon that it's not playable. It's not going to get 1 out of 10 because the perfect +1/+1 counter deck exists where you can slot this in there, but you're not going to want it. You're really not going to want it. 2 out of 10. All right, next we have Llanowar Elves. What a jump. All right, 1 mana, 1/1 that can tap for a green. It's simple, it's sleek, but it's very powerful because it's a ramp. And if they don't remove it, you're probably going to ramp into something good with your 3-drop, or you're going to get to 4-drop on turn 3. So, great card. Llanowar Elves puts in the work. I'm going to give it a 6 out of 10. Next, we have Mild-Mannered Librarian. This is a 1/1 for 1 as well, and you can pay 4 to turn it into a 3/3, and when you do, you get to draw a card. That's pretty good. I like these cards that have additional effects. If it's late in the game, you can immediately do that and just kind of treat this as a 5-mana 3/3 draw card, which isn't great, but it's not horrible, and it is a nice 1-drop as well. That versatility is pretty nice. I'm going to give it a 5 out of 10 simply because it says draw a card, so this card can replace itself, which is so powerful and limited. All right, so next we have a Nessian Hornbeetle. This is a 2-mana 2/2. Okay, and at the beginning of combat, if you control creature power 4 or greater, put a +1/+1 counter on it. So it has the potential to get really big. This is a very good playable card in the power 4 or greater deck, but it doesn't do much unless you have that creature with power 4 or greater. That being said, if you do, this becomes a 3/3, then it becomes a 4/4, then it becomes, and it just kind of casually gets up pretty high. And when you look back on it, once it's a 5/5 and you only spent 2 mana on it, it's really nice. So, because of that, I'm going to give it 5 out of 10. All right, next we have the coveted Overrun. It is in this format. It is a very good card. Now, it is only playable in a heavy green deck because of the 3 green pips, but by golly does it win games. Creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain trample until end of turn. It's simple, it's nice, it works, it wins. Oh goodness, is this so much better than Preposterous Proportions? I think this card is great. It's phenomenal. You have to have the right deck though, because if you only have 2 creatures out, this doesn't do a whole lot unless those creatures are really, really big and didn't already have trample. That being said, I do think it's very, very good, even though it's 5 mana. I'm going to give it 7 out of 10. I don't know what I gave Preposterous Proportions, but I hope I gave it something really small and that it was significantly less than 7 out of 10 Overrun. Next, we have Reclamation Sage. This is a rather popular elf. 3 mana 2/1, but when it enters, destroy artifact or enchantment. Now, there's not a lot of artifacts that are going to burn you in this game, in this format, but there are some enchantments that are really going to burn you. And a Reclamation Sage is just a great thing to have. It's still a body, so it's not nothing if you don't have a good target for it, and it's a great way to remove something that was really going to mess the game up for you. I love this card. I think it's more than playable. You don't want to have too many in a deck, but if you don't have any, you might want to grab one. I'm going to give it 4 out of 10. I mean, removal isn't anything. I'm going to give it 5 out of 10, just because in green, you don't have a lot of options, right? And I would much, much rather play a Reclamation Sage rather than play a Broken Wings. So 5 out of 10. Scavenging Ooze. This is a 2/2 for 2 that lets you pay a green to exile a target card from a graveyard at instant speed, mind you. And then if that was a creature card, put a +1/+1 counter on this creature and gain a life. This is just value after value after value. on a card. I love it. I think it's great. I highly suggest you play this card if you ever see it. It's so good. Shout out to Ashley. She loves her oozes. We're still going to make her an ooze commander deck at some point, but she'll attest down in the comments below when she sees this. Maybe she'll leave a comment screaming for the ooze. No matter what I give it, it won't be enough. It deserves a 15 out of 10 in her heart, but I'm going to give it an 8. 8 out of 10, phenomenal card, play it every single time. But it doesn't single-handedly win you the game, but it does get pretty close. All right, next we have Snakeskin Veil. I also love this card. It is a nice instant speed interaction card. In it, you put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control, and then that creature gains hexproof. So you can really burn someone if you think they're about to remove your creature, or if you have a really nice big drop that you need to keep around. Wait until you have one more mana than what you need to cast it and hold up your Snakeskin Veil, because it's going to be worth it. If they play that removal on it and you get to burn them on that and buff up your big thing, they are probably just going to quit that game if it's on Arena. Or even if it's in person, they might just start packing up the cards. I love this card. I think it's great. 5 out of 10. Man, I have a bias towards green. I really think I do. I mean, some of these cards are just so good. All right, next we have Vivian Reed. This is a nice mythic planeswalker here in green. 3 and 2 green. 5 loyalty. That's what it's called. Her +1 lets you look at the top 4 cards, reveal a creature or land, put it into your hand, rest on the bottom of your library. That's great. Now, it is 5 mana, draw a card when you first play her, but it is going to get to repeat, and it's not just draw a card, it's look at top 4 and pick a card, so it's nice, totally playable. Next, you have her -3 is the Broken Wings effect. Very nice to have. Again, you can totally be burned by enchantments, you're a little less likely artifacts, and some creatures with flying you got to get rid of. And then, of course, the -8. If you manage to get the creatures you control have +2/+2, Vigilance, Trample, and Indestructible, you win the game. You win the game. That's all there is to it. You win the game. So Vivian Reed is a great card. It's sort of the definition of bomb again, but it doesn't quite do it on its own like those really high ends. So I'm also going to give it an 8 out of 10. All right, next we have a Wary Thespian. This is a 3/1 2-drop. When it enters or dies, Surveil 1. Now, Surveil is a little more powerful than what I used to think, so I do like that ability, and it is playable, but I'm hesitant at the 1 power and toughness because there's so much that can remove this card. So because of that, now you do kind of want it to get removed so you can get the Surveil trigger again, but because of that, I'm a little about it, and that's just going to land 3 out of 10 for me. I don't tend to play it too often. And lastly, we have the Wildwood Scourge. This is an X and a green, 0/0 that enters with X +1/+1 counters on it. So it can be a 2-drop 1/1, but it can also get a lot bigger. And then whenever 1 or more +1/+1 counters are put on another non-Hydra creature, put 1 on this creature, which is powerful and it can get back up there. But more often than not, I see this just be a creature that is 1 tick lower than the vanilla pay to power and toughness ratio, right? This is always going to be a pay some amount, get a creature with 1 less than that power and toughness. And it has the chance to get bigger. But I would rather just play a creature that's already bigger or that already has more value. So because of that, I don't think you should play this card very often. I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10 though. You can play it, but I think that a lot of cards are going to beat it out. And that is all the green cards. I mean, wow, this went faster than I thought it would. I think it's still longer than the red one, but dang. I love green as a color, and I think it's very strong in this set. If you guys disagree or agree with me, please let me know down in the comments below. What is your favorite green card from this set, and what is your least favorite green card? If you enjoyed the video, please leave a like, comment, subscribe. Any and all of it is greatly appreciated, and you guys are what makes Rollsicle so great, and every single thing that you do contributes more than you could ever know. It really does keep us pumping out these videos, keep us making this content, so thank you guys so much for being so great. I will see you guys in the next one. Until then, may the rolls be ever in your favor, and we'll see you guys then. Peace out.